A lot of you probably woke up this morning to a push notification on your phone, maybe from a news service, saying that there has been an air closure over El Paso, Texas. Why? Why did the airspace close? Originally, they had said this was going to be a 10-day closure. This is one of the biggest closures since September 11th of 2001, so almost 25 years since there had been an airspace closure like this. Now, we are only a few hours later, and that airspace has reopened. So it starts to open up and beg those questions of, well, why did this happen? And what does this have to do with whatever's going on in West Texas?
The Secretary of Transportation, Sean Duffy, put a post on X that said the FAA and the Department of War acted swiftly to address a cartel drone incursion. The threat has been neutralized, and there's no danger to commercial travel in the region. The restrictions have been lifted, and normal flights are resuming. As we mentioned before, the cartels use drones to smuggle drugs across the border. They have IEDs that they can drop from drones. They can smuggle weapons. They even just use it for surveillance tactics of finding new places to mule people across the border for their coyotes. They also use it to track border patrol. And there's also many ways that the U.S. combats this, whether it be through technological ways. You can take down a drone by disabling it with a directed pulse that will, disable the technology, causing the drones to collapse to the ground, or whether it is a
discombobulator.
Not that discombobulator, but maybe.
Something
because
like it.
There's also this situation here where people are speculating, well, because this happens all the time, was there something else going on? We know that it is near Fort Bliss. And
checks a lot of boxes.
That we know that there's a lot of new technology that all of a sudden the United States has been trying out in places like Venezuela. Was there a concern that if they were testing out new technology on the drones that has not been previously tested in the radius of commercial airlines? Is that a situation? There's a lot we don't know and a lot of speculation, because in and of itself, a drone incursion across the border, especially unless they all of a sudden have the type of drones that are military drones, a larger Reaper-style drone that is almost an airplane size as compared to a more commercialized drone that can still be big, but traditionally where they're flying aren't cause for a complete ground stop, especially for 10 days. We know that this is over, but a lot more questions, especially for members of Congress that represent these areas. I think we will find out more about what's going on, but it doesn't seem that just the superficial story of it being the everyday type of drone. There is another reason why the FAA decided that a 10-day ground stop was necessary for a time, and then they were able to change and course correct.
Maybe they thought it was something stronger, bigger than maybe what it was. They were able to go in and investigate this situation and see what it was and realize it was at no threat, or was at a minor threat. Maybe that's what was going on.
Those that are pro-border security and pro-immigration reform and controlling the amount of illegal immigration have lost the narrative a little bit, is because it has focused so much on ICE raids in places like Minnesota, so far detached in the American mindset from the southern border that it can...
Minnesota, probably one of the most detached.
Right, and that's what I'm saying. You start to lose maybe the narrative of where this all stems from. And I want to point people back, because this was one of the most revealing publications or articles written about immigration in some time. And I always think about this when we're talking about this entire narrative. This is from the New York Times in 2022. So in the middle of the Biden administration. We always think of the cartels as being drug smuggling operations and weapon smuggling, all the illicit activities that are harmful to American citizens and things. But that is their focus, right? That's their moneymaker. You think of even the way it's in Hollywood and put on TV is that it is the drug kingpins, and that's how they make all their money. Yeah. This article
from shady warehouse somewhere.
Right. This article from 2022 in the New York Times is titled "Smuggling Migrants at the Border Now a $1 billion Business." Because previously, while they still made a significant amount of money, but in 2018, during the first Trump administration, the cartels were only making about $500 million from smuggling of migrants. So not necessarily smuggling of people that are smuggling drugs. This is just the business
Getting
of
people over the border.
illegal immigration. They found in 2022, 2 years into the Biden administration and the disastrous border policy that they had, it had become a $13 billion business.
It's much less of a risk.
In 4 years, they took it from $500 million to $13 billion of revenue source for these drug cartels. These drug cartels that are narco-terrorist parastates that operate within Mexico, and they had taken that revenue astronomically more. That is what we're talking about when we talk about immigration and border security. Because not only are the illegal migrants here, many of them criminals, committing these horrible crimes here without a lot of retribution in many cases, but it also is a major revenue source for the drug cartels, which kill tens of thousands of Americans through overdoses of fentanyl, through overdoses of all these other drugs that they smuggle in.
Really, 100% of their business is that they're in the business of American deaths.
And when you see how much money they're able to make from a lower risk proposition, that helps fund the other operations. So just the illegal immigration component of it is a national security issue. Even when you take out all of the other political policy debates that people have around it, there is a reason why this administration focuses on it. And I think to some degree, they have lost that narrative because it does need to go back to who this is benefiting. They have their operations in their kind of quasi-states within Mexico, but their operations they don't stop at the border. They have associates here. They have individuals here that are members of cartels that are here. And that is also part of the problem with the open borders policy is it's not just the strain on the system and where you can have that humanitarian policy discussion. And that's where many on the left want it to stay. They want it to stay in that because the hearts and minds approach can maybe give their cause more value. But in reality, they're ignoring what is going on. I have a friend in law enforcement out in a Western state that is specifically on task force that deal with the cartel activity within their region. And one thing that I was speaking to him later last year that they saw in just the first few months of the President Trump's second term is the decrease in specific cartel activity, or even the way they change which things they were trying to make money off of, which types of drugs, knowing that if there was more fentanyl-related deaths in the area, then they were concerned about what actions the administration would take. They're making business decisions with American lives and how long they can continue their high profits and stay in business. That is exactly why we need policies like a strong border and rule of law and law enforcement that is empowered to make our communities safer.